Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to return to a brewery that has now featured on the channel many times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the last couple of years. They are still a relatively new addition to the Swedish beer scene, but they have become very well respected and quite rightly so in my opinion. I would say that this brewery is best known for their different kinds of New England hazy, whatever you want to call them, IPAs, but also for their big fruity juicy sours, modern, Nordic, again, whatever we're going to actually call these beers. So if those are two style categories that interest you, this is one of the Swedish breweries that you really have to check out, in my opinion. But the beer we're going to have a look at today is a style that I know these guys can do very well. I've heard good things about this one, and it's also one of their latest releases through Systembolaget. So needless to say, I'm quite curious to see what this one is going to have in store for us. So hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head up towards Gothenburg once again. Göteborg, as you would say in Swedish, the Swedish craft beer capital up there on the west coast. Got to get the Gothenburg catchphrase in for Gothenburg beers because it is just channel tradition these days. But for this review, we are going to return to the wonderful Fermenterarna, or the fermenters, as it would be in English. So this particular beer is called Hot Dog Club. It comes in at 6.5% ABV, and it's another New England hazy, whatever you want to call it, IPA. This one should actually be quite a nice change of pace because I think it's mainly been doubles and triple IPAs that we've been reviewing from Fermenterarna in recent times. It's been a wee while, I think, since we've had just a regular IPA, but I would still love to see these guys try a black IPA or an old school West Coast IPA at some stage. So hopefully that is something they do have in the works. But this particular beer was released as part of the Lokalt Småskaligt assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden for September of 2022, if memory serves me correctly. But yeah, I think we should crack on with this one and see what we have. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Fermenterarna in the past, and we will definitely add more to that in the near future. There's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support you give is hugely appreciated, and you can of course check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Swedish playlist, and the whole channel has that geography-based tagging system, so you can search for what you like in the channel homepage. But yeah, Hot Dog Club New England IPA from Fermenterarna. Let's get on to the brewery notes and chat a little bit about Fermenterarna then. So, Fermenterarna, as I've told you before, was founded by Niklas Arnesson and Anna Claesson back in 2018. So the brewery was originally based in a little place called Strömstad in Västra Götaland to the north of Gothenburg, close to the Norwegian border, a very picturesque fishing village apparently, but they have more recently moved south. But apparently Niklas got interested in beer, having ordered a beer in a beer bar one day without really knowing what it was, and it turned out that this was the Tropic Thunder from Brewery, which in my opinion is one of the cult classic Swedish beers, a collaboration with Stillwater Artisanal from the States. Beautiful beer, one that you really do need to try. But this really got me thinking about what beer could actually be. Anna, on the other hand, had quite a long history with things that ferment, and she also ran the restaurant Koster's Trädgårdar, and she'd made sauerkraut, sourdough bread, you name it, she'd play with it and fermented it. But a little bit after this, they really got into home brewing and trying to brew their own beers. So the professional brewing, the professional brewing, we should say, started out with a very small 200 litre brew kit. And then later on in 2018, they actually took a break to expand the company after their beers had been received very well at different festivals that they attended. But they then had a new facility with two 500 litre brew kits and a total tank capacity of 1,700 litres. But they were aiming to brew 50,000 litres over the course of 2019, which I believe they did. And then they said they had the equipment to brew around 250,000 litres of beer per year. Following that, they actually just continued to develop new recipes, focus on their sales and build up. And then in August of 2021, they moved to a new brewery in Hisingen in Gothenburg, taking their equipment with them, and they also received a new 3,000 litre brew kit later in the year. They do plan to open up a tap room and restaurant in the near future, so we'll need to keep an eye on what happens with that, but hopefully I can get up to Gothenburg once again and take a look at that. I do need to get up there and film a few more things actually. But according to Untappd, these guys have produced around 145 different kinds of beer as of October 2022 when I'm filming this review for you. And like I said to you earlier, Fermenterarna are known mainly for their different kinds of fruity, juicy, sour beers, but also for their New England hazy IPAs. But I would love to see a few more styles from them at some point in the near future. So we'll need to keep an eye on that and see what happens there. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Fermenterarna for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can of course check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all their latest goings on. You can check out some of my old reviews, and of course you can check out the Untappd page to learn a bit about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's crack on and actually have a look at this beer itself. This is one that I've been looking forward to. So as we said earlier, the name of this one is Hot Dog Club. It comes in at 6.5% ABV. It's a New England IPA. We've got the usual gold top on this one and the lovely kind of white background. Fermenterarna's cans are always quite distinct. There you can see the Fermenterarna bottle symbol there. I'll just put my face behind it so the camera focuses, because it's face recognition technology, of course, so that people can spy on us. But yeah, 6.5% New England hazy IPA, this one. The hops in this one are Nelson Sauvin from New Zealand, and then Galaxy and Victoria's Secret from Australia. We know these hops quite well, of course. Nelson Sauvin, 16% alpha acid, gives you that lovely big kind of green grapey, green-white grapey, gooseberry sort of flavour. Galaxy and Victoria's Secret are quite similar in their flavour profiles. Galaxy has about 14% alpha acid. I think Victoria's Secret is a bit less, on about 12 or so. But yeah, Galaxy will give you this really pungent, bright grapefruit and passion fruit sort of note, whereas Victoria's Secret will give you quite a big passion fruit, but also some mango and more kind of pineapple-y notes. So yeah, quite curious to see my first, I think this might well be my first solely Southern Hemisphere hopped New England IPA from Fermenterarna, and that was the main reason why I wanted to get this one. But I always enjoy the IPAs that these guys do. So like I said, September 2022 release through the Lokaltes Småskalig assortment, and this one cost me about 50 Swedish kronor, so about €5, £4.50, $5.50 American. Let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. Curious to see what we're going to get with this, but I think it will be pretty good knowing this brewery. So here we are. Oh, the light's going up and down again. The sun's coming out from behind the clouds. So there we go. Yes, and just position that back down. Anyway, there you are. So as you can see with this one, this is poured a lovely, very bright yellow colour. Before the head disappears, I think we can say that it's got a nice finger of a frothy, I would say, yeah, pure white head. Some bigger bubbles toward the top. It's kind of medium-sized bubbles, this one. It's not madly foamy, I have to say. But yeah, colour-wise, this beer gives you a really nice kind of bright, slightly paler yellow. I would say, yeah, kind of mango, pineapple juice sort of colour, this one. I always like comparing New England IPAs to different fruit juices because that's just what the appearance reminds me of. But remember, the colour of these beers depends on the type of malt that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, the length of your wort bowl is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugar's caramelised, thus you get a darker coloured beer. Any barrel aging that you do, or any adjuncts that you put in, will affect that as well. But when it comes to New England IPAs, we don't have to care about that so much. So yeah, looks pretty good. Level of haze in this one for a 6.5% is kind of about right. Level of haze in these beers, of course, depends on the oak content, wheat content, and the yeast that you use too. It can vary from brewery to brewery and beer to beer. It's not a set rule about as you go up the alcohol scale you should get more haziness. But yeah, for a 6.5%, that is pretty decent. If we put the light through it, you can see the opacity. It's not the soupiest and gloopiest we've come across, but yeah, it is around what you would expect for this ABV of New England IPA, to be fair. So yeah, I'm used to having Fermenterarna IPAs that are as pale as this one. So nothing really surprising about the appearance of this beer when we consider what we've had from them in the past. So yeah, I don't think we need to say anything more about this one. One or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head. But I think it is now aroma time, so let's look at this. Oh yeah, this is kind of interesting. So you often get this with Fermenterarna. As I've said to you before, when it comes to some of these New England breweries, quite often you'll get 6 different characteristics. You'll often get like a little bit of a kind of farmhousey, yeasty sort of thing, a little bit of a more kind of rye leaning bready character, wheaty bitiness, oaty creaminess, barley malt bread, but also a little bit of a more you'll also get a little bit of a more kind of brown sugary kind of note out of some of them as well. But these 6 characteristics are what you should look for in New England IPAs, and quite often a given IPA will show you a few of these different characteristics. But yeah, this one for me, the thing you often find with Fermenterarna is that these beers actually smell really farmhousey and slightly vegetal when you smell them. I think that they taste a lot better than they smell. I think that's fair to say with Fermenterarna, but I think it's to do with house yeasts and things. I think they've got their own yeasts that they use in these beers. But the thing you get out of this one right away is that typical sort of crackery, vegetal sort of thing that you expect with Fermenterarna. But when you sugar the beer up a little bit and let your nose get more kind of involved in it, then yeah, you detect a lot more interesting things from this beer. So yeah, for me, once again, this has quite an interesting aroma. But yeah, the backbone of the beer, absolutely, you get this nice, the backbone of this beer, you get that nice kind of fresh bread, white bread crust in there. On top of that, you get a little bit of a kind of knäckebröd sort of thing. You definitely get a little bit of that sort of knäckebröd, Jacob's cream cracker type note, and then you get a little bit of a sort of wholemealy brown bread note to it as well. And then some, definitely some barley malt white bread on top of that. But yeah, aroma wise, I think this goes together quite interestingly. So yeah, it's good. It really is good, that. I like the way this one, it's actually, the thing is with the Fermenterarna beers, as I say, the aroma can be quite unusual when you first smell it, but they always mellow out really nicely, and you're starting to get that with this one. The more that at least I'm starting to get it, the more that I smell of it. So on top of that little kind of wholemealy brown bready sort of thing, yeah, a little bit of white bread in there, and then, pardon me, you can smell a bit of the wheat there too, but personally I think the wheat is a little bit more present at the back of the nose. You definitely get a little bit of that kind of bitiness from the wheat in the back of the nose with this beer. But yeah, there's some nice kind of smooth oaty characteristics with this one. You can smell that it's a nice kind of creamy oat, which tells you the beer is still quite fresh. But there are one or two little lighter, slightly drier notes out of that, I would say. But yeah, aroma wise, the malty side of this beer is quite nice. There are one or two little hints of biscuit and things coming out of this one, but it's not, the sweeter side of the malt base in this one is not too the sweeter side of the malt base in this beer is not madly present, if that makes sense. It is a little bit more balanced. Just looking at the camera, seeing how bright that beer is. Look at this. That's crazy. I don't know what's going on with the sun today. It's quite annoying. Maybe I have to close one of these blinds. But yeah, malty side of things is quite nice with this beer for sure, but not so much of a big sweet side to this one. On the hoppy side of things then, there's a good little bit of earthiness to this one, which is interesting when you consider these hops, because normally you don't get such an earthy note out of them. There's also a nice big kind of, I do get a little bit of floral character out of them, but for me the green component is mainly leaning toward that more grassy end of the spectrum. It's kind of a wet, freshly cut grass that you're getting out of this beer, in my opinion. So yeah, I would stick with that, mainly a kind of wet, freshly cut grass from this particular beer. And yet, remember, with New England IPAs, they rely mainly on late addition hopping and dry hopping. It's early addition hopping that's going to give you like a really big, deep green component, and that, of course, is more present in West Coast IPAs. West Coast IPAs use all three. New England IPAs use mainly late and dry hopping, and they, of course, late addition hopping will give you a little bit of bitterness, but mainly flavour and aroma. Dry hopping is all about the flavour and aroma. So yeah, you've got a nice kind of bright green component to this one. So yeah, the way that goes together is really nice. The fruity side of this beer as well to me is very attractive. You can smell that the Nelson Sauvin is the one that's kind of forming the backbone. You get this big oily, you get this lovely big oily gooseberry sort of thing out of the beer. So yeah, lovely big oily gooseberry notes to it. Definitely a wee bit of that kind of white green grapey character as well. Love Nelson Sauvin. But then yeah, behind that of course you've got quite big juicy tropical fruits with this one. And I'm surprised that Galaxy's not a little bit more kind of pungent in its usually Galaxy gives you this big pungent grapefruit passion fruit, but the tropical notes in this one are actually very, very juicy. So maybe the Victoria's Secret is having a good influence here. But yeah, definitely some juicier passion fruit, lovely big juicy mango. You've got quite a lot of pineapple in this beer as well, in my opinion. And of course you've got a few complexities in there, such as a little bit of the kind of papaya and the drier apricots and stuff like this. But aroma wise, this is quite interesting, but it's kind of typical for Fermenterarna. You get that more sort of farmhousey and yeasty kind of vibe in the beginning when you first smell it. And it's not, I will say, I always find that with Fermenterarna beers. I don't tend to like the aromas on first smell, but they always kind of mellow out quite nicely. So just be aware of that when you try some of the beers, and they do taste quite different to how they smell. I will say that normally. But yeah, let's get stuck into this one. So this is the Hot Dog Club, a 6.5% New England Hazy IPA from Fermenterarna, now in Gothenburg. Slange, skål, cheers. Ooh. Yeah. Once again, that's a pretty damn solid New England IPA. Wouldn't expect anything less from these guys at this point, to be honest. Yeah. This one gets a big thumbs up from me. The first impression of it is I'm surprised with this because, again, this is, as I said, Fermenterarna beers quite often are very different in the flavour profile to how they are in the aroma, and you get that one in this beer with abundance. So, the backbone of this beer is actually, it's kind of interesting. It's actually quite a fluffy and quite almost kind of dusty backbone that you get from this one. But definitely the first impression I have of this is a New England IPA. It's a bit more oaty than the aroma would have you believe. The green component is kind of as I would expect, and the fruity component is a bit more, it is kind of what I'd expect too. So it's the way that the malt base goes together in this one that makes it quite different from the aroma. So yeah, let's kind of break that down and just describe it for you a bit more in depth again. So, as I say, solid beer once again from Fermenterarna. Middle third of the palate, you get a nice little bit of that kind of fresh white bread crust. That forms the backbone of the beer. But the whole malt base, as I say, it's almost just a little bit dusty. It's almost like that bread crust has a little bit of like flour left on it from being straight fresh out of the baker's. So that's quite interesting. On top of that bread crust layer, there's a wee thin layer. There is a very kind of thin layer of there's a nice sort of thinner layer of a kind of wholemeal brown bready type thing going on, definitely. So yeah, nice kind of thinner brown bready, wholemeal bready layer into this one. But then on top of that you get the nice kind of dense white bread layer. And it's interesting because on top of the little bit of brown bready layer you've got a more airy white bready character. Then you can feel the wheat sitting on top of that, just kind of densifying it out. But the wheat plays a much bigger role in the back third of the palate. We'll come to that in a minute. But yeah, down the middle kind of line of your tongue, if you like, with this beer, you can taste like quite a creamy oaty character with this one. So yeah, you get that nice creamy oat right down the middle line of your palate. But as you move out toward the edge, of that middle third of your palate, you start to feel the more kind of dry aspects of the oats. And as I've said before, oats are an indicator of how old your New England IPA is. We're still drinking this one fairly fresh. actually. But yeah, you definitely get a little bit more earthiness out of this beer, a little bit more dryness, sorry, from the oats in this beer. I'm saying earthiness because I'm getting a wee touch of earthiness on the back corners of the palate. Again, we'll come to that later. But yeah, oaty creaminess down the middle line of your tongue and a wee bit of dryness as you move further out toward the edges. So yeah, the way that goes together is quite nice. Like, and the further you go into the aftertaste, you get a little bit more of the oatiness out of the beer. This beer doesn't have too big a sweet component to it. In the dead centre of your palate, you maybe get just a little hint of that Werther's Original, and of course that's the alcohol. But then as you move out from that, there's a teeny bit of McVitie's Digestive Biscuit. But yeah, this beer is not one of those New Englands that has a big sweet component to it. It's a lot more kind of light than that. It's a lot lighter than that, I should say. So kind of bear that in mind with this. It's nicely done. I do have to say this beer is kind of nicely done. The middle third of the palate and this beer goes together really well. But let's focus on the back third of the palate then. So, back third of the palate, it's kind of similar. I mean, you do get the grainy bread crust again, and it feels grainier and dry. Remember, more grainy, better flavours come out further back on the palate. The brown bready layer is a little bit thicker. And then on top of that, you get the white bready layer, but then the wheat, you really start to get the wheaty bitiness on the back third of the palate with this one. So this beer is actually quite balanced between its oaty notes in the middle third of the palate and the wheaty bitiness in the back. But then on top of the wheaty character, you get that more airy, yeasty kind of note out of this one. There's a bit of that Jacob's cream cracker, sort of woody, bready sort of thing going on. But definitely back third of the palate is taller in its flavour. And then as you come further forward, the flavours just condense together that wee bit more, and then you get, that's your malt base basically. So the malty side of this beer is quite nice. Let's go on to the hoppy side of things, and as I said earlier, you do get a little touch of earthiness in this beer, which is interesting because none of the three hops in this beer, the Victoria's Secret, the Galaxy, or the Nelson Sauvin, are known for their earthiness. So yeah, that is quite interesting. So, with the green component then on that one, as I say, there's a little bit of earthiness in the back corners of the palate, but as you come further forward, it almost becomes a little bit more herbal. And as you reach the front corners of the palate, there is a little bit of that kind of floral aromaticity to the beer. It's almost a little touch spicy, but all of the hops in this beer are capable of showing a little bit of floral spice. It depends really when you add them into the wort boil, but round the front curve of the palate, the beer is definitely a little bit lighter and more grassy for sure. And the grassiness does have a good wee bit of zesty character to it too, which I do enjoy. So yeah, the green component of this, it does get brighter and brighter the further you go into the aftertaste too, but let's focus on the fruity side of the beer, the front third of the palate. So yeah, you do get a bit of zesty grassiness to this, which I didn't expect from the beer. But yeah, front third of your palate, then border region between front third and middle third of your palate, a little bit of a bready build up, and the base of that front third of your palate is smooth white bread, but on top of that, you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. And I will say the tropical fruit notes in this one are a lot more of what I would expect from these hops compared to what we had from the Aroma. So at the back of that front third of your palate, you do get that big pungent, you get a bit of that pungent grapefruit from the Galaxy in this one, but then very quickly as you move forward, you get a big juicy passion fruit, and then some of the juicier mango, and those are going to come from both the Galaxy and the Victoria's Secret in this one. But as you move into the middle of that front third of your palate, you're getting a bit more complexity. I'm getting quite a bit of pineapple out of this beer, particularly as you go further into the aftertaste. That, for me, is more attributable to Victoria's Secret than to Galaxy quite often. But yeah, the thing is, on the front half of that front third of your palate, it's all about the Nelson Sauvin. You get that typical big, oily, white, green grape, gooseberry type note out of this beer. and it's just it's absolutely lovely in that regard. I really like how that goes together in this one. The big oily nature that this beer has is quite nice on that front part of your palate. So yeah, I like it. It's a thumbs up from me. I don't think we need to say anything else about the flavour profile of this one. It's very well balanced, and it shows you both sides of the southern hemisphere hops. There's some great hops in New Zealand. There's a whole variety of them down there, so check them out if you haven't already. Let's round off this review with a wee look at the mouthfeel. So mouthfeel wise, this beer's right in the middle, to be honest. For me, yeah, right in the middle, mid-bodied, smooth carbonation. There's a bit of wetness to this one, but as I say, it's really quite smooth in a lot of ways. So yeah, the way that goes together is quite interesting. IBU wise, I think this one might be a little bit more bitter. This could be like 40 IBUs or something. It does feel like it's got a wee bit more bitterness to it, particularly in the aftertaste. The malt base, as we said, is quite smooth in this one. It only shows a little bit of sweetness. And I always find this with Fermenterarna. Other beers have got you get a bit more of the kind of farmhousey vibe from them in the aftertaste, and the malt bases are always quite smooth. And then yeah, the fruity side of this beer is well balanced between the tropical side of things and the more oily Nelson Sauvin elements. So it's quite an interesting beer, this one, for sure. And the grassiness has a wee bit of zesty character to it as well, which I think adds to the effect of the bitterness. But once again, it's another solid New England from Fermenterarna, and that's what we've come to expect from them these days. So yeah, gets a thumbs up from me once again. Yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this review. So this was the Hot Dog Club, a New England IPA at 6.5% ABV from Fermenterarna, now in Gothenburg, formerly of Strömstad. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Fermenterarna as well, and we will return to these guys very, very soon, I'm sure. In the meantime, check out their social media, check out my social media, let me know some beer recommendations, and I'll see you soon. Slàinte, skål, and cheers. I'll try not to knock the beer over.